Hi everyone, this is Dr. Mike, host of the free iTunes podcast, Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike, but that's not why I'm here today. This is another Saving Savvy episode. This is part 2 of my review on the Fuji S1 Super Zoom camera. So this is not the SX1, this is the S1, which is their new camera that has weather sealing. Now if you want to see my more comprehensive review, just look right up there, click on there and it'll take you there. This one is going to look at some videos and it's going to look at some pictures. What I will say is that although I think my initial feelings about the camera stand, after using it more extensively in a lot of difficult shots, I have a higher opinion of it, but still the general feelings in that review are the same. So let's take a look at a variety of different things. The first thing that you're going to see are 4 short video clips. The first one will show you what the camera acts like with image stabilization on, and then there will be a clip with image stabilization off, and then there'll be a clip that shows me zooming to kind of illustrate that you can hear the motor, but also the fact that when you get out to that 50x zoom, it's impossible to control the camera unless you're on a tripod. That would be for any 50x zoom, even with this 5-axis stabilization and everything. And if you look at my hand, I don't know if you can see that, I don't have much of a tremor. I'm old, so I probably have some tremor, but I don't have much of one. But when you get out to 50x, you just absolutely can't control it. The other thing that I would say about that zoom motor, however, is that when you're actually listening to music or you're like recording a performance, you really can't hear it, so that's a plus. And then the last video clip is a clip of a performance or a part of a performance at this thing that I went to, this high school production. And the camera was doing some weird thing with its exposure, so I just wanted to show that. So let's go and show those first, and then we'll move on to some pictures. With all the image stabilization on, I'm just holding the camera.
Are there all these like lot to my friend?
It's pretty good. With all image stabilization off. That's pretty good too. This is to check the zoom noise. You can see it's hard to hold it straight.
It is? Whelping.
All right, we're going to move on to some pictures now, and these will hopefully show a variety of the strengths and weaknesses of this particular camera. So let me get into the first one. This first picture is just done with an overhead light in the kitchen at an ISO of 400. I think it looks fine, but it's soft, and I think you'll see a lot. This camera is not like super sharp. If we go up to an ISO of 3200, you lose some detail and some dynamic range, as you would expect. But here again, it's kind of the image is kind of soft. It's usable, but it's not tack sharp. Okay, this just shows you the camera at its widest angle at 24 millimeters, and you can see that it's a pretty wide angle lens. If you look up the street and to the right, in the far distance, you'll see a beigeish building kind of sticking out a little bit, and that's what we're going to super zoom on. So this is the 50x zoom, and I can guarantee to you that my hand was shaking. So the camera had to do a lot of fancy trickery internally to make this look even somewhat sharp. And you can see that when we do a 100% crop of the rock, and it almost looks like it was painted. It's smeared, but smeared in a way that looks like it's an oil painting or something. And so that's how the computer and the camera compensated for that shaking, kind of creating its own little picture, which is better than nothing, but you really need to use a tripod with one of these cameras, and unfortunately this has a plastic tripod mount. Here's just kind of a portrait of sorts. Again, color rendition is good, the colors are pleasing, they kind of pop, but the actual focus is a little bit on the soft side. Here's another portrait that I'm actually focusing on the eye, but here again, it looks pretty nice, very pleasant, but it's certainly not tack sharp. And it actually looks like the tree is more in focus than my son, even though I clearly was focusing on, which is a funny thing that I think Fuji cameras sometimes do. This just shows one of the filters. This is the toy camera. Here's the fisheye, which can be fun. Usually they show a dog. I happen to have my son with me, so he was unfortunately the victim of this. And here's one of the selective color filters where you can see that everything is black and white except those things that are blue. I kind of like this filter. I like this type of filter in a lot of cameras. I think it's called dramatic or something like that, but it gives you this very high contrast, very kind of nice looking picture. And here's a shot using the macro function. And what's kind of nice when you use the macro function is you really blur out the background. And I think it did a fine job on the macros, as do most small sensor cameras. Now this is just a shot of a house, and to me, if I looked at this picture, I would say this came from a compact camera. The sky is blown out, nothing wrong with it, looks good, sharp, clear, I mean, nothing bad, but nothing spectacular. But this camera has a high dynamic range feature where it does it in camera, which is this, and I think that looks much better. I really kind of fell for that HDR mode in the camera. Here again we have a picture of a local park by my house. To me, very much looks like from a compact camera, and that's no insult, by the way. I mean, compact cameras take great pictures, but there's nothing about this that shrieks super high resolution or anything. But if we go to that HDR mode, boy, it looks pretty good. I like it quite a bit, and I hope that shows up on the YouTube video. Now this is one of the few super zooms that I was able to get somewhat in focus. This was a plane in flight, and here's the moon. If I did 100% crop of this, what you'd see is that it really isn't in focus, but it's kind of in focus. Again, it would be much better with a tripod mount or a tripod, but unfortunately the tripod mount on this camera is plastic, and so it's going to break quickly, I think. That's my opinion anyways. Here's the real problem. So you want to do nature photography. To get an animal that's moving locked in and holding it by hand with your own internal shaker, you can get blurry images. Here's another example of a duck at that 50 times zoom. Again, not really that sharp. And this dog looks a little bit sharper. He was completely stationary, but he's out of focus too. I always take this picture to kind of show off the dynamic range of the camera, and in this particular shot it looks pretty good, better than a super cheap compact. And I always take this bridge too. This looks more like what you'd see from a compact camera. Nothing bad about it, but Here again, at a very great dynamic range, and when we do 100% zoom in, I'd say that looks kind of what you'd expect from a compact camera. Now here's one of the great functions, the super macro function, and I don't know what these things are, these dry seed pods or thistles or whatever, but what's really cool is the ones in the forefront are really pretty tack sharp, and the ones in the background are getting blurred out, and that's pretty awesome looking, so I kind of like that. Here's another HDR image of a tree, so much better than what you would get just with the little sensor alone. And so you really can see the blue in the sky and the green. And again, I kind of went for that HDR mode on this camera, and definitely would use it more. This is the venue that we're at when we were trying to do some low light shots. So we're in a high school auditorium, which is going to have better lighting than, let's say, your grammar school or your junior high. And you can see where I'm seated. So I'm pretty far back. All the lights are on in this picture, of course. And then this just shows you getting closer with the camera. It does a pretty good job. Now here's one of the problems. If you have any movement, you're going to get blurred. But if you take enough shots, you can at least get some shots that are usable, like this one here. Here again, it looked like I was locked on this girl, but she's certainly not in focus. But yet, and here's another one where this was the MC. This is actually the percussion teacher for the school, and this was a percussion show. And so he's out of focus. But yet this guy, pretty good. Looks actually very good. As does this singer. She looks really good too. And, you know, we're way out there. We're 209 millimeters, which is kind of 209, that's probably like 1,000 millimeters or more. Here again, nice clear shot. The trick was to wait until they weren't moving much and then take lots of shots and hope that one would turn out. So let me get out of this screen and back to you. So the bottom line was that many of the shots taken just traditionally, as I said in my earlier video, look just like a typical compact camera. Those shots that I took with the HDR mode, though, were quite appealing, and the camera did perform better than I expected in a lower light or difficult light situation. However, still, it's not suitable for, I think, taking shots of wildlife, or it would not be suitable for taking shots of, let's say, your kid in a dark gym playing basketball or something. Now, they could improve if you used a tripod. In fact, I'm sure it would improve, because a lot of that blur is not just coming from the person, it's coming from me with that tremendous zoom. Sad they gave you a plastic tripod mount, which is going to strip out. I'm actually investigating options to put a metal tripod mount on this camera, kind of checking eBay and places like that. So we'll see if that works out, and maybe I'll get back to you on that. So the bottom line of the camera is, as I said before, it's a very nice camera. It has some very nice features. It's basically, at its heart, a compact camera, and that's the level of images that you get. To take full advantage of that 50x zoom, you're going to have to use a tripod or a monopod or something to make the camera more stable. And then I think you might get even more success than I have had. It surprised me in its low light performance, especially when the objects were stationary. But it didn't surprise me when things were moving, because the lens is just a little bit too slow for that. So this completes my review on the Fuji S1. Again, check out part 1 to get more details on the feature set and my opinions. And as always, have a wonderful day. And if you get some time, please give my absolutely free podcast a listen. It's called Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike. It's on iTunes and other pod-catching sites. Take care.